Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, text number 10 through 11. Word for word for text 10. Yasya Rashtre Prajaha Sarvaha Trasyante Sadvi Asadubhihi Tasya Matasya Nashyanti Kirtihi Ayuhu Bhagaha Katihi Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas Trasyante Sadya Sadvihi Tasya Matasya Nashyanti Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas Trasyante Sadya Sadvihi Tasya Matasya Nashyanti Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas Trasyante Sadhu Sadhubihi Tasya Matasya Nashyanti Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati Hare Krishna.
Yasya Rashtre Praja
Yasya Rashtre Praja
Yasyamatasya Nashyanti
Tell me when. Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadhu Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati
Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rashtre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadhu Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogatihi
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Saptya Babihi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nasyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtira Yurbhagogatihi
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadhya Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogatihi
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Yastya Rashtre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Prasyante Sadhya Sadhubhi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadhya Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadhu Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayu Bhagogati
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadvya Sadhubihi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogatihi
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogati
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Yasya Rastre Praja Sarvas
Trasyante Sadvya Sadhubi
Trasyante Sadva Sadhubihi
Tasya Matasya Nashyanti
Tasya Matasya Nashanti
Kirtir Ayur Bhagogati
Kirtir Ayor Bhagogati Esharagyam Paro Dharmo Yatar Anamarti Nigraha Atta Enam Vidishyami Bhuta Druham Asatamam. Word for text number 10. Yasya, one whose, Rashtre, in the state, Prajaha, the living beings, Sarvaha, one and all, Trasyante, are terrified, Sadhi, O chaste one, Asarubihi, by the miscreants, Tasya, his, Matasya, of the illusioned, Nashanti, vanishes, Kirtihi, fame, Ayuhu, duration of life, Bhagaha, fortune, Gatihi, good rebirth. Translation and purport. By His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O chaste one, the King's good name, duration of life, and good rebirth vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in His kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the King to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore I must kill this most wretched man, because he is violent against other living beings. Purport. When there is some disturbance caused by wild animals in a village or town, the police or others take action to kill them. Similarly, it is the duty of the government to kill at once all bad social elements such as thieves, dacoits, and murderers. The same punishment is also due to animal killers, because the animals of the state are also the praja. Praja means one who has taken birth in the state, and this includes both men and animals. Any living being who takes birth in a state has the primary right to live under the protection of the king. The jungle animals are also subject to the king, and they also have a right to live. So what to speak of domestic animals like the cows and bulls? Any living being, if he terrifies other living beings, is a most wretched subject, and the king should at once kill such a disturbing element. As the wild animal is killed when it creates disturbances, similarly, any man who unnecessarily kills or terrifies the jungle animals or other animals must be punished at once. By the law of the Supreme Lord, all living beings, in whatever shape they may be, are the sons of the Lord, and no one has any right to kill another animal, unless it is so ordered by the codes of natural law. The tiger can kill a lower animal for his subsistence, but a man cannot kill an animal for his subsistence. That is the law of God, who has created the law that a living being subsists by eating another living being. Thus, the vegetarians are also living by eating other living beings. Therefore, the law is that one should live only by eating specific living beings, as ordained by the law of God. The Ishopanishad directs that one should live by the direction of the Lord and not at one's sweet will. A man can subsist on varieties of grains, fruits, and milk ordained by God, and there is no need of animal food save and except in particular cases. The illusion king, or executive head, even though sometimes advertised as a great philosopher and learned scholar, will allow slaughterhouses in the state, without knowing that torturing poor animals clears the way to hell for such foolish kings or executive heads. The executive head must always be alert to the safety of the prajas, both man and animal, and inquire whether a particular living being is harassed at any place by another living being. The harassing living being must at once be caught and put to death, as shown by Maharaj Parikshit. The people's government, or government by the people, should not allow killing of innocent animals by the sweet will of foolish government men. They must know the codes of God, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Maharaj Parikshit quotes here that according to the codes of God, the irresistible king or state executive jeopardizes his good name, duration of life, power and strength, and ultimately his progressive march towards a better life and salvation after death. Such foolish men do not even believe in the existence of a next life. While commenting on this particular verse, we have in our presence the statement of a great modern politician who has recently died and left his will, which discloses the poor fund of knowledge of the codes of God mentioned by Maharaj Parikshit. The politician was so ignorant of the codes of God that he writes, quote, "I do not believe in any such ceremonies, and to submit to them, even as a matter of form, would be hypocrisy and an attempt to delude ourselves and others. I have no religious sentiment in the matter." End quote. Contrasting these statements of a great politician in the modern age with those of Maharaj Parikshit, we find a vast difference. Maharaj Parikshit was pious according to the scriptural codes, whereas the modern politician goes by his personal belief and sentiments. Any great man of the material world is, after all, a conditioned soul. He is bound by his hands and feet by the ropes of material nature, and still the foolish conditioned soul thinks of himself as free to act by his whimsical sentiments. The conclusion is that people in the time of Maharaj Parikshit were happy, and the animals were given proper protection because the executive head was not whimsical or ignorant of God's law. Foolish, faithless creatures try to avoid the existence of the Lord and proclaim themselves secular at the cost of valuable human life. The human life is especially meant for knowing the science of God, but foolish creatures, especially in this age of Kali, instead of knowing God scientifically, make propaganda against religious belief as well as the existence of God. even though they are always bound by the laws of God, by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyanatimirandasya Ganajana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. O chaste one, the king's good name, duration of life, and good rebirth vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in his kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the king to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore, I must kill this most wretched man, because he is violent against other living beings. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is, especially in this pastime, we have an ideal ruler, a Rajarshi, Maharaj Parikshit. And so this Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for the revolution of the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. And therefore, the politicians, executive heads, the leaders of the world, they should actually learn from these great personalities like Maharaj Parikshit. Does Maharaj have a comment?
Thank you.
Can you pin him?
Yes, thank you. We may wonder how such principles could be introduced into society. How would it be practical that, such a person who's killing an animal is caught and at once punished severely without going through due justice of courts and things like that. That's not the main point. The main point given here is that there needs to be knowledge of reality, of the way things are, reintroduced into human society. It must be explained that there is life after death, that the soul is different than the body, that God is the controller. It is one nation under God. We say one nation under God, we say in God we trust, but in actuality we don't know anything about God's laws or his instructions, what should be done. And therefore it's a hypocrisy. So then someone will say, well, now you're getting into the realm of belief. Religion is a belief. It's what you believe in. If you don't believe in it, it doesn't apply to you. That's foolishness. How can you say if somebody doesn't believe in something that doesn't apply to them? I don't believe in red lights, so going through red lights doesn't apply to me. That's foolish. No intelligent person will accept such a philosophy. Yet that's the philosophy that we're running the state under, running society. So there needs to be a tremendous, shall we say, debate and challenge where those who have transcendental knowledge come out and explain scientifically how these things are true. How can there be a soul? And it won't be easy because presently the so-called leaders of society, scientists and educators and politicians, etc., they have established their own paradigm based on atheism or agnosticism or something like that. So this is the main problem. Because it's not a problem to set up the system once the paradigm is established based on transcendental knowledge. Then all the people will be alerted that the law has now been changed. It will no longer be allowed to kill animals, and no longer slaughterhouses are illegal, etc., etc., etc. Anyone who does so will be punished in this way, just like all the other laws we have. The law of killing a human, for example. There's law by that. Everyone knows it. So that should be established based on scriptural knowledge, and it should be established that such knowledge is not just the belief of a small group, but is the statement or the will of God. Jiva Jiva Sajiva. One living entity is supposed to live at the designated cost of another living entity, designated by nature and God. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Guru Maharaj. Very nice points. Yeah, this reminded me of a pastime that was spoken earlier in a few classes ago. I don't remember who was speaking about it, but there was a brahmana, and it was in Maharaj Yudhishthira's kingdom, so it must have been Hastinapur or Indraprastha, I don't remember. But this brahmana's son or child, whenever his wife would give birth, the child would immediately die and disappear. And so this brahmana would go to, he would be complaining about this, and Arjuna had heard, and he became disturbed because he was thinking that, my family's reputation, and of course he was is in jeopardy, and also he was, of course, compassionate towards this brahmana, but he wanted to please the brahmana. And so this happened several times to the children were dying or disappearing. And Arjuna vowed that if I don't save your next child, then I will kill myself, basically. So he created this kind of like, he shot an arrow and created this sort of like, a fortress of arrows and weapons around the brahmana's house. But the brahmana's child, when it was born, it also disappeared again. So he was disturbed. He didn't know what to do. And then Krishna said, I know, so that's fine. So then that's when they went off and pierced the universe and met with Vishnu. Anyway, so it just reminded me of that because the citizen or the brahmana was critical to the king. How could this be happening, in this kingdom, such a wretched, I don't know if he used wretched king, but what kind of king is this that newborn babies are dying in his kingdom? So the citizen was blaming the king, the executive head, for the atrocities that were happening in the kingdom. And we know that, as it mentioned here, that the kings, they're supposed to protect all citizens, the animals, the human beings. And so if the king is living out for Dharma and administrating Dharma to the citizens, then instead of sinful activities, then there should be no disturbances. Like, before this pastime took place, when Maharaj Yudhishthira was ruling, there was no disturbances because he's religion personified, right? Of course, this was a pastime of the Lord. So this is what can happen if you have a real just ruler or a righteous, a godly ruler, is that there will be so much peace and prosperity materially, and people will be making progress on the path back to Godhead. So the leaders of the world need to take the example of these great personalities, the Vrajarsis, and actually rule the citizens according to their example, the Mahajanas. And then there'll be actually peace in society. But today, as was mentioned here, that these personalities and even great men of this world, they simply base their actions and behavior and laws off of their own moral compass. So, and not the laws of God or not the natural law. So then they're just speculating, speculating what is good, what is bad, what is moral, what is immoral. And therefore, it's the blind leading the blind into a dark well. So this is what Prahlad Maharaj is concerned about. Blind leading the blind. These materialistic people and materialistic rulers, and the cycle is just going on and on and on. So, of course, that's why there is a need for the Brahmana class, which Srila Prabhupada has emphasized that he's trying to restart the Brahminical culture. And so this Krishna conscious movement is more or less establishing Brahminical culture in the world. And not that everybody will have all the qualities of a Brahmana, but we will develop the natural qualities of a devotee, which some of those correlate with the Brahminical qualities as well. Just like Arjuna had Brahminical qualities, but he was actually a Kshatriya by nature, because he was a devotee of the Lord, so he was saintly and gentle and all this. So we see that in today's society, because these rulers are going off their own moral compass and not the laws of God, then there's so many slaughterhouses, so many cows being killed. The animals, there's some protection, like if you kill someone's dog, it's a crime, There's some protection with laws, but there's not protection for cruelty of animals, yes. Of course, some animals. But so in this way, all the citizens are suffering by these sinful reactions. There's so much karma, so much sinful reactions, so much group karma that is accumulating. So it's just a matter of time before these sinful reactions fructify in what? In natural disturbances, in famine, disease, coronavirus, etc., etc. All these, war is also part of it. All these things come naturally by the laws of nature because we're living sinfully. And we see we're living sinfully. People are championing, yes, we're becoming more free because we have protection for abortion and protection, legal protection for killing animals and all this. So they have legal protection for their sinful activities, and they think they're becoming more free, but actually everybody's in complete anxiety and stress, depression, so much disturbances is going on because of all the sinful activities. Nobody is happy in the material world. And it really shows when we meet them, and because we've tasted a taste of happiness of Krishna consciousness, then we always know that when we meet people in the material world that they're not happy. Because we know what it's like to be free from anxiety when we're serving Krishna. Then we're becoming liberated from the modes of nature. We experience freedom from anxiety. We experience satisfaction, productivity in life, because we're actually doing what is the dharma of the human being, which is to inquire into the absolute truth. We're actually focusing on the most essential issue of life, which is how to solve this janma mrityu jara vyadhi, this birth, death, old age, and disease. So it's very important that there is a Brahminical class of society that can actually give true knowledge to qualified leaders, and thus this can actually make society in a more peaceful condition versus what we have in today's world, which is just chaos, more or less, and getting more and more chaotic and more sinful and degraded. People are becoming more and more depressed and anxious. Yeah, so this point about vegetarian, Maharaj on Sunday was speaking to a guest. It was this young lady, I don't remember her name, come from UMKC. But he was just saying about how it's so unnecessary to kill cows, because you might want to enjoy the blood of a cow by its meat, but you can get that blood from milk products, and he was glorifying paneer or curd. And he was saying that basically that is the blood of the cow transformed. So you can get your satisfaction by paneer. Haribol. So that's why I try to have a paneer sabji every Sunday, or most Sundays. So yeah, that was a really nice. I heard that before, but when he said it again to this lady, it's like, wow, yeah, that makes total sense. So yeah, it's really so unnecessary to eat meat and to kill animals for the pleasure of the own tongue, because when you have prasadam, especially, there's so much amazing dishes you can make that even if you're interested still in meat, there's even prasadam, or there's even things you can offer which are have this similar texture and consistency as meat would, but it's not going to give you the sinful reaction which you're going to get from eating meat. So people simply need a higher taste, and not just that, but knowledge and purification, so that they can give up these sinful activities. So prasadam distributions is super important. Preaching the philosophy, super important. Chanting, sharing the holy name is all so important, just so people can elevate their consciousness more and come to these realizations, come to this knowledge. Simply by this process of serving Krishna, then knowledge and conscious knowledge and detachment naturally occurs. So when we're sharing Krishna consciousness, this is what we're trying. This is a byproduct of giving them Krishna consciousness. Is they're going to experience causeless knowledge and detachment from the material world. And then we see, like, some people are able to give up so many things that would seem impossible. When we see somebody becoming interested in Krishna consciousness, then they start giving up all these activities, which you would think, like, how is this person going to get out of that? But then they start serving Krishna and get so much attachment for the Lord, then they give up so many sinful activities and bad habits. We know, we experience that in our life. It's also really refreshing to see how someone else is experiencing Krishna consciousness and making progress, especially when they're just coming into it. It's very inspiring and encouraging for us and refreshing. So let's see. All right. There is one other kind of theme I wanted to mention about. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Ananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for allowing me to say something. There's a point in the purport. Prabhupada writes, foolish, faithless creatures try to avoid the existence of the Lord and proclaim themselves secular at the cost of valuable human life. So this is how they try to avoid the impending fact that they're not in control, or that they're going to suffer for their sinful activities. They just claim we're secular, as is that sidesteps the whole idea that there is a sovereign God who's actually, if you don't obey his instructions, you're subject to the laws of material nature. But they try to sidestep this all their sinful activities just by this one. We're secular, or we don't believe, so it's not going to affect us. As if that's actually how reality works, just by not believing it. It's actually childlike logic, because a child can say, I don't believe the fire is going to burn me, and then you get burnt, And then people wonder why there's so many reactions in society, as you nicely pointed out. And because people just follow blindly, like you said, Krishna makes this point in the Bhagavad Gita, the general mass of people just follows the leaders. So people naturally also adopt this secular idea, and therefore they say, well, they're not really conscious that there are actually repercussions for their actions. Because traditionally, even in Vedic society, you brought up the point of the Brahmana. We saw that even the prajas, or those who were under the king, they would complain immediately if the king is being sinful, or they notice that he's not following, because they know that they also bear some responsibility to live under such a sinful person or a sinful king, and they will have to actually suffer the reactions of this. So it's like nobody could escape the laws of nature if people were actually substantially conscious. If people knew and were actually faithful to God, then there would be a mass revolution actually in society, because people would not tolerate that there's so many sinful activities going on in the name of secularism. So I was just meditating on this point, that if we preach Krishna conscious, at least the general mass of people, as people become awakened to what the responsibility they bear by voting for some, sinful king, or being under the shelter of a sinful king, they would naturally want a pious, God-conscious ruler in society, because we have to suffer the reactions of whatever rulers we're under. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, thanks for pointing out that. I was looking for that exact quote in the purport. I was thinking about, I was trying to engage this Gary, our friend Gary, who comes every now and then, and trying to set up some classes for us, some speaking engagements in schools in the area. And he was saying he was asking around in the high schools, but they won't allow any religious activity or talk going on during school hours because of this secularism. And so he was thinking, okay, well, I'll check some after school hour engagements. And so this is part of the problem, is that you can't, from a young age, just actually when you're supposed to be learning about God, how to be God conscious, how to be really religious. And it's unfortunate that there's not an opportunity for that in the educational institution today, at least in those young years. Yeah, there's ways around it, but it's not like a very important thing. The most important thing is your secular education. So they give the justification, well, if we allow other religions to come in and talk, then we have to allow these other people, and the Christians and the Muslims and this and that. That's part of like a justification they have of why they won't make an exception for you. But we really need to know, like, what is the absolute truth? There should be this endeavor or this desire to really seek out the absolute truth. And when that research is done objectively, then one comes to this Krishna consciousness movement, because you see how all the pieces fit together when you study the Vedas and you hear from Krishna directly. And everything becomes more clear about these other religions as well, at least the principles within them. So we have to deal with this secular world, and if you want to preach Krishna consciousness, then you might have to figure out how to work within these restrictions. But in America, it's pretty decent. There's some sort of religious freedom. There is religious freedom, but of course there's restrictions as well. But there's also these, and at least in the educational institutions, there's very secular, restrictions. And this is the problem. That's why the students don't have good qualities. There's not a real emphasis on this being an essential part of life. Okay, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Just have a quick announcement. We can turn off the Zoom.